So, good day everyone. Today, we will be discussing the topic about beach and barrier island environments. And in this presentation, mas maiintindihan pa natin kung ano nga ba ang beach and barrier island environments, pati na rin yung importance and purpose nila, as well as yung mga process na nag-o-occur dito sa mga environment na ito. But before we proceed to our agenda, let me introduce first our group members. So first, we have John Brennan F. Cadano. Next, we have Marvin D. Del Mundo. Next, we have Isabel V. Dumas. And also, we have Cyrus Jobel O. Ranuda. And I am Princess Ashley G. Garcia. But before we begin, here's an overview of what we'll cover in this presentation. First, we'll introduce the topic, followed by discussing the depositional setting, beaches, and barrier island systems. We'll also touch on the characteristics of modern beach and barrier island environments, their stratigraphy, and conclude with ancient beach and barrier island environments. Also, as we move forward from this agenda, it's important to note that the topics that we'll cover here, especially yung characteristics ng beach and barrier island environments, as well as their stratigraphy, hindi lang siya theoretical. Kasi, they have real-world applications sa mga field kagaya nga ng coastal engineering, environmental conservation, pati na rin yung sa climate change mitigation. So, yung pag-intindi natin o yung pag-aaral natin ng environment na to, or yung beach and barrier island environment nga natin, it can help us para mas makapag-desisyon ng maayos, and also, para mas maprotektahan pa natin yung ating mga coastal communities, and also, ma-preserve natin yung ating biodiversity. So, without further ado, let's begin. So, let's start by defining what we mean by beach and barrier island systems. So, sabi dito, mainland beaches are long, narrow accumulation of sand aligned parallel to the shoreline and attached to the land. Next, yung barrier island beaches naman, they are similar to mainland beaches but are separated from land by a shallow lagoon, estuary, or marsh. So, dito, makikita natin na ang mainland beaches and yung barrier islands natin, though similar sila in terms of appearance, they still function very differently in terms of their interaction with natural forces. For example, yung mainland beaches natin, they are often subjected to more direct wave energy kasi attached sila sa coast. And on the other hand, yung barrier islands naman natin, yung nag-a-act as first line of defense, kumbaga, defense system siya. Kasi, ina-absorb niya yung ocean's energy before it can reach the mainland. Kaya, yung barrier islands natin, pinoprotektahan nila yung mainland from wave energy or yung ocean energy, and it plays a crucial role in coastal management, influencing how we develop and protect coastal infrastructure. Now, bakit nga ba importante ang beach and barrier islands? Una, it protects the mainland from oceanic forces like waves at saka yung storms. And yung protection na to, it can help in preventing coastal erosion as well as flooding. Pangalawa, they are integral to coastal management and protection strategies kasi through these strategies, we can mitigate the impacts of natural hazards and preserve these vital ecosystems. Pangatlo, it serves as a coastal defense system, reducing the risk of damage to human structures and communities. Kumbaga, nalilimitahan niya yung damage sa mga structures tsaka sa mga communities, lalo-lalo na yung sa coastal communities natin. Kasi, yung kagaya nga ng sabi kanina, barrier islands, it serves as a first line of defense kasi ina-absorb niya yung wave energy or yung ocean energy. E di yun, napoprotektahan niya yung mga coastal communities. Kasi siya muna yung tinatamaan ng waves and na-absorb niya ito. And in addition, beach and barrier island help in habitat creation for various species, and also it plays a key role in supporting marine and terrestrial ecosystems. So, dito, yung protection na na-offer ng barrier islands, hindi lang siya theoretical, kagaya nga nung sinabi ko kanina. Kasi based on my research nga, during yung hurricane sa ibang bansa, for an instance, yung barrier islands along the Gulf Coast, sobrang laki ng role niya kasi na-minimize niya yung impact ng storm surge sa mainland. Parang yun nga kanina, kasi first line of defense system nga, so sila muna yung tatamaan or sila muna yung mag-a-absorb nung energy na nagmula dun sa mga katubigan natin, sa mga ocean energy, yung waves, mga alon, mga storm surge, yan, sila muna yung tatamaan. Then, without these natural barriers, yung damage sa mga coastal cities could have been far worse. Yun nga, ibig sabihin, kung wala yung barrier islands, parang sobrang lala ng magiging damage na sa mga cities natin or yung sa mga malalapit sa coastal area. Yan. And additionally, by studying these systems, we can gain insight into how our weather and climate change, as well as yung kung paano ba tumataas yung sea levels natin. Yun nga, parang we can gain insight kung paano nga ba nagbabago yung panahon natin, tsaka yung ating klima, and kung paano makakaapekto yung pagbabago ng sea levels sa mga coastal areas natin sa mga susunod pang panahon, or yun, yung mga epekto niya sa atin. So now, let's talk about the depositional setting. So, sabi dito, ang depositional setting daw is a specific environment where sediments accumulate, such as rivers, lakes, or oceans. So, sinasabi dito na ito yung specific environment kung saan naiipon yung mga sediments natin. And yun nga, beach and barrier islands daw are the most dynamic of all depositional environments because constant yung galaw ng ang tubig at hangin dito. And yung mga pagbabago sa depositional settings natin, maaari din siyang makaapekto sa ating mga local climates and yung mga weather patterns din, which is maaaring magdulot ng malalaking epekto sa ating ecosystem and lalong-lalo na sa ecosystem ng ating mga coastal areas. Also, the movement of sediments within a depositional setting is influenced by factors such as wave energy, tidal currents, and wind. And in the case of beach and barrier islands, yung mga sediments dito, they are primarily composed of sand, silt, and sometimes gravel, which are constantly reshaped by the forces of nature. So, yung mga sediments dito ay kagaya nga ng sand, silt, tsaka ng gravel, patuloy siyang nire-reshape ng mga forces of nature, kagaya nga ng waves, ng mga storm surge, mga ganyan, dahil 'di ba, yun yung mga karaniwang forces of nature na nagmumula sa mga ocean. And yun, over time, yung continuous deposition and yung erosion din, pwede niyang mabago yung size and shape ng mga environment na ito. Kasi, for example, yung sa beach natin, it's either mag-grow wider siya or mag-shrink, depende sa weather condition. So, dun sa mag-grow wider siya, it can be after a period of calm weather, and dun naman sa mag-shrink siya, it can be after a storm. And so, ibig sabihin, yung kapag naintindihan natin yung mga processes na to, bilang mga future geological engineers and future geologists, mas mapipredict natin yung future changes, and mas makakapag-isip pa tayo ng mas appropriate na coastal management strategies upang mapangalagaan pa natin yung mga coastal areas na to. So now, let's proceed to the classification of coast based on their tidal range. So, sabi dito, coasts are classified into 3 groups based on their tidal range. The first one is the microtidal coast, the second one is the mesotidal coast, and lastly, we have the macrotidal coast. So, sa microtidal coast, ang mga coast na to have a tidal range of 0 to 2 meters. Sabi dito, barrier islands and associated environments are mostly commonly found along the microtidal coast since yung features dito ay well-developed and nearly continuous, gawa ng mas maliliit dito yung tidal variation, and ito yung nagbibigay daan para mabuo ang malalawak na beaches and island. So, doon naman sa mesotidal coast, this coast experience tidal range of 2 to 4 meters. Barrier islands on mesotidal coast are less characteristic or less compared to microtidal coast kasi medyo mas mataas yung tidal range niya compare sa microtidal coast. Also, when present yung barrier island sa mesotidal coast, typically short siya or stunted, and ang tidal inlets yung common dito. And lastly, sa macrotidal coast naman, they have a tidal range exceeding 4 meters, and barrier islands are generally absent on macrotidal coast due to the extreme tidal range. And yung large tidal range natin dito, it disperses and dissipates wave energy over a broad shore, making it ineffective in forming barrier islands. So, ibig sabihin nito, bihira ang mga barrier islands dito kasi nga, malawak yung tidal range and hindi nito kayang suportahan yung pagbuo ng malalaking sediment deposits. Compare naman dun sa dalawang nauna, since mas mababa naman yung tidal range nila compared dun sa macrotidal coast. And to add lang, one of the most interesting aspects of coastal classification is how this environment responds sa tidal range. Kagaya ng sa microtidal coast, with their minimal tidal fluctuations, mas nasusuportahan nila yung barrier islands. In contrast, yung sa macrotidal coast nga, they are less likely to develop barrier islands kasi strong yung tidal currents dito, and patuloy na nire-reshape nung tidal currents ang shoreline, which prevents the build-up of sediments. Hindi na bi-build up yung sediments dito kasi mas strong yung tidal currents. So, mas nawawasak o mas madaling mawasak yung mga sediment deposits dito. At hindi mabibuild. Hindi kagaya nung sa microtidal coast, mas madaling makapag-build up ng sediment deposits kasi hindi naman ganun kalakas yung tidal currents, tsaka yung tidal range nito mababa lang, nasa 0 to 2 meters lang. So, yung classifications na to, they play a key role in determining where we build or how we protect coastal areas, and even kung saan ba yung certain species of marine life ay mabubuhay. So now let's have a visual representation of the classification of ghosts based on tidal range. And here we can see that sa tatlong yon na classification of ghosts, common naman yung river deltas, pero mas common siya sa mesotidal and microtidal coast. While yung sa barrier island, generally absent siya sa macrotidal coast, tapos common sa microtidal coast, tapos sa mesotidal coast ay medyo, tapos doon naman sa tidal deltas ay mas common siya sa mesotidal, hindi masyado sa microtidal, and iilan sa macrotidal. Tapos sa macrotidal, yung kakikitaan natin siya ng linear sun ridges, and absent naman yung linear sun ridges na yun sa mesotidal and microtidal. Next, yung sa mga inlets naman natin, sobrang common niya sa mesotidal, while sa microtidal naman, meron din, pero mas common sa mesotidal, tapos sobrang unti lang sa macrotidal coasts. So, sa tidal flats naman, tsaka salt marshes, common siya sa macrotidal coast, tapos sa mesotidal at microtidal ay hindi masyado, pero meron din naman pangilan-ngilan. Then, sa next naman na figure, we can see the visual representation of the tree. And dito, we have the microtidal, mesotidal, and the macrotidal. And makikita natin dito na sa microtidal coast, may minimal tidal variation nga siya. Kaya, well-developed and continuous yung mga barrier islands dito. Tapos, sa mesotidal, may moderate tidal range siya. So, yung barrier islands dito ay much shorter. Tapos, makikita natin dito kung paano nag-break up yung inlets, and frequently na naghihiwa-hiwalay siya compare naman dun sa nauna. Dire-diretso lang yung barrier islands. Tapos yung sa mesotidal ay hiwa-hiwalay. Well, doon naman sa macrotidal, na nakaka-experience ng extreme tides, barrier islands are absent, and mas mahirap mabuo dito yung barrier islands. And also, makikita rin natin dito that the physical characteristics of each coast are largely shaped by the tidal range. Sa microtidal coast, for example, it often features along uninterrupted stretches of beach, making them ideal for tourism and recreation. And however, the stability of these environments can be deceptive kasi yung single major storm natin, pwede siyang mag-cause ng significant erosion na pwedeng ma-reshape niya yung coastline sa ilang oras lang. Tapos, yung mesotidal and macrotidal coast naman natin, on the other hand, they experience more frequent changes kasi nga, much higher yung tidal range niya compared dun sa microtidal coast, which results in a more rugged and less predictable coastal landscape. So, yun, sa nakikita natin sa picture, mas continuous yung sa microtidal, sa mesotidal ay frequent na nagbe-break or common ang tidal inlets, tas sa macrotidal naman, generally absent ang barrier island kasi extreme yung tidal range dito. And to sum up, yung ang itsura ng coast ay nade-determine depende sa tidal range na nila, sa tidal range ng bawat coast ng classification of coast. So now, let's proceed to the beach and barrier island development. barrier islands and beaches can develop in several forms, depending on their location and environmental conditions. The following are the main types of beach and barrier island formations. And first one is the single beach attached to the mainland. The second one is the strand plains. And lastly, we have the barrier islands. So, barrier islands and beaches are formed through a combination of wave action, tidal forces, and sediment deposition. However, the rate at which this formation develop can vary widely depending on local conditions. For example, in areas with strong currents or strong ocean currents, sediment may be deposited more rapidly, leading to the quicker formation of barrier islands, and conversely, in regions where sediment supply is limited, these features may take thousands of years to form. Also, human intervention such as dredging and coastal development can also influence the rate and nature of these formations, and sometimes may mga unintended consequences din na nangyayari. And so now, let's talk about the different ways that barrier islands and beaches develop. And formations may vary on their locations, kagaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, and as well as yung environmental factors natin. So, this is the example of the single beach attached to the mainland. And ang sabi dito, this type of formation involves a single beach that is directly connected to the mainland. So, it's a simple and common type of beach formation directly connected to the land without any significant separation. And this type of beach is typically found along stable coastlines with minimal tectonic or tidal influences. And this is the example of a single beach attached to the mainland. And as we can see in this image, the beach is aligned parallel to the shoreline with the sand accumulating directly along the coast. And this type of formation is common in areas where the coastal forces are less intense, allowing the beach to remain connected to the mainland. So, next naman is strand plains. A strand plain consists of multiple parallel beach ridges and parallel swales. A specific type of strand plain is the Cheniere Plain. So, ibig sabihin, ang strand plain consists of parallel beach ridges or yung mga elevated strips of sand natin, and yung swales naman ay yung mga depressions sa pagitan ng ridges, which are small depressions sa pagitan ng mga ridges. And also, strand plains, meron din silang natural capacity na mag-store ng water, which is ito yung tumutulong sa pagpapababa ng epekto ng mga floods sa mga coastal communities natin. Kumbaga, napapababa nito yung effects ng flooding sa mga coastal areas and coastal communities na malapit dito. So, in addition sa role ng strand plains, it is also important sa ating mga ecological areas kasi the ridges and the swales can provide different habitats for various plant and animal species. For instance, the elevated ridges are open home to salt-tolerant vegetation, while yung mga swales naman natin, it may support freshwater habitats after rainfall. So, this biodiversity makes strand plains vital or mahalaga sa overall health ng mga coastal ecosystems natin, since they also serve as a natural water filtration system that traps sediments and pollutants before they can reach the ocean. So, hindi lang nila napoprotektahan yung mainland natin, napoprotektahan din nila yung ocean natin. So, it's a win-win situation, kumbaga. Then, specific type nga, kasi kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, is the Chenier Plain, which we'll explore further. And, ito nga yung picture na kuha ni Bruce Hayward. And you'll notice here na meron siyang multiple parallel ridges which indicate that yung shoreline has moved inland over time due to sediment deposition and coastal processes. Also, Chenier Plain are usually found sa mga coastal areas kung saan ang mga sediments ay naipon mula sa mga rivers and estuaries. And ang pagkakaroon nga ng mga parallel ridges natin ay nagbibigay ng protection laban sa mga storm surges as well as it can also fight coastal erosion. So, that's it for the Strand Plains and Chenier Plain. Now, let's move on to the barrier islands. So, barrier islands are coastal landforms that are separated wholly or partly from the mainland by a lagoon or marsh. It is most commonly found on microtidal coast, kagaya nga ng na-discuss kanina, since sa microtidal coast, mas mababa or hindi intense yung tidal range dito. Kaya, common yung microtidal, yung barrier islands natin dito. So, barrier islands are coastal landforms that are separated from the mainland by a lagoon or marsh, and most of these islands are found in microtidal coast where the limited tidal range allows them to remain stable, and also these islands act as a natural barrier protecting the mainland from oceanic forces. Since kagaya nga ng sabi natin, barrier island serves as a first line of defense system. So, defense system siya, pinoprotektahan niya ang mainland from wave energy or ocean energy na bago pa tumama to sa mainland or yun. Pinoprotektahan niya kasi siya muna yung sasalo ng mga impact na manggagaling sa ating ocean or dun sa mga wave natin. And also, yung sa mga storm surge, pinoprotektahan din niya yung mainland. And this is the picture of a barrier island, and ito yung sandbar barrier island that protects the mangrove forest from the ocean waves. And in this image, we can see that barrier islands really serves as a defense system, and pine-prevent nito yung strong waves and tides from directly hitting the mainland or coastal ecosystems, kagaya nga nung ating mangroves. And yung forest na to ay essential kasi siya for supporting biodiversity, and it can prevent erosion. Kaya napakahalaga ng role ng barrier islands sa coastal management kasi napoprotektahan niya yung mga mahahalagang forest or yung mainland para hindi ito masira.
Beaches are truly fascinating natural structures. They're not just pretty places to visit, they actually play a critical role in protecting the land from the powerful force of the ocean. Imagine this, beaches act as a natural buffers, absorbing the energy from waves and storm before it reaches inland areas. Without beaches, coastal communities would be much more vulnerable to erosion and flooding.
In addition to that, one of the critical functions of a beach is acting as a buffer zone between land and the ocean. Kapag malalakas ang alon, sinasalo ng beach ang energy ng waves. Instead of waves directly hitting inland areas and causing flood or erosion, the beach absorbs much of that energy. So this process significantly reduces the impact on nearby communities and ecosystems. Kaya mahalaga ang conservation ng beaches because without them, coastal regions would be highly vulnerable to storm surges and rising sea levels.
Now, beaches are more complex than they look. Today, we're going to dive into their structure, the forces that shape them, and how they're connected to Barrier Island system. But first, let's start by breaking down the morphology of the beach.
When we look at a beach from the perspective of its physical features or morphology, we can divide it into different zones. These zones are vital in understanding the processes that shape the beach over time.
The backshore is the part of the beach that usually out of reach from tides or waves, except during storms or high tides. Here we often find dunes, sand piles shaped by the wind. These dunes are essential because they act as natural barrier to storm surge, preventing inland flooding. This is the part of the beach where people often sandbath, relax or set up beach chairs because it's typically dry and stable. Dunes also play a key role in the beach ecosystem. They trap wind-blown sand, maintaining the beach shape, and are often stabilized by plants like beach grasses, whose roots are anchored to the sand.
Backshore zones often include back beach dune deposits, which are mounds of sand built by wind processes. And these dunes help prevent inland flooding.
Next is the foreshore, the working part of the beach where waves constantly interact with the shoreline. This zone includes the swash zone where waves rush up and down the beach. Depending on condition, water movement here can either deposit sand during calm weather or erode it during storm. It's the part of the beach where you often see people splashing around, building sandcastle, or dipping their toes in the water. It's also called the littoral or intertidal zone because it's exposed during low tide and submerged during high tide. This is where most of the beach daily erosion and deposition occur. Next is the shore face, the part of the beach always underwater. It extends from the low tide line to where waves break. The shore face is crucial because it stores and moves sand, which can be transferred onto the beach during storms or calm weather. If you're snorkeling or swimming just beyond the breakers, you're likely in the shore face area. Here, the wave base at the depth at which waves can still move sediment is around 10 to 15 meters. Beyond that, the waves no longer disturb the seabed.
Shore face near shore. The shore face extends seaward from the low tide level to the point where waves no longer disturb the seafloor. It's typically up to 10 to 15 meters deep, depending on the wave base or how far down waves can still steer sediments. This zone is crucial because it interacts with both the beach and offshore sedimentary environments. For example, storms or strong waves can pull sediments from the shore face, which may later be redeposited onto the beach. In this diagram, we can visualize the different zones of the beach environment. Dunes, also they are elevated ridge of sand, often found at the backshore, created primarily by wind but reinforced by vegetation. Dunes act as a natural barrier against coastal flooding. Berms. Additionally, these are flat elevated sections of the beach. Usually, you'll find berms separating the dry part of the beach from the foreshore. Berms are created by wave action and their position can shift based on the season, with higher berms forming in the summer when waves are gentler. Beach scarp. A beach scarp is a steep slope or cliff-like feature formed when waves erode the shoreline. This typically occurs during storms or periods of heavy wave action. Nearshore and offshore. The nearshore zone is the shallow water just beyond the breaking waves. Beyond that, we have the offshore zone, where waves don't break, but currents may still carry sediment. These two zones are essential for sediment transport and coastal ecology.
Now, let's dig into the depositional processes that shape these beaches. Wave processes. First, let's talk about orbital wave motion. In deep water, waves move in circular orbits, and while this motion doesn't move much sediments, as waves approach the shallow water, their orbits become more elliptical. This change creates friction with the seabed, causing sediment to move. Next is the breaker zone, where waves get taller and eventually break as they approach the shore. This process is key for sediment transport, as breaking waves stir up sand, making it available to be moved by currents or deposited on the beach. If you ever watch surfers waiting for the perfect wave, they're sitting just before this breaker zone. Next is the swash zone, where waves rush up and down the shore. Sediment transport here can either be constructive, adding sand, or destructive, eroding sand. Calm waves usually build the beach, while storms tend to erode it. This is the area where beachgoers often run to chase the wave or let the water lap at their feet.
So dito, wave processes are among the most crucial factors in shaping the beach environment. In deep water, wave action is characterized by circular orbits or water molecules. These orbits decrease in size as we go deeper, which is why waves in the middle of the ocean don't stir up sediment from the ocean floor. However, when waves approach shallow water or what we call the shoaling zone, the situation changes. This image helps illustrate what we just discussed, with labels shown on the offshore zone, the surf zone, and the shoaling zone. Offshore is where the waves are forming but not yet breaking. As they move toward the shore and enter the surf zone, they break, creating energy that moves sediment. Yung breaking point naman is where the wave crests are, and the plunging point is where it crashes onto the shore. Therefore, we can see na each zone has its role in transporting sediment, maintaining the balance between erosion and deposition.
Next are the longshore currents, formed when waves hit the shore at an angle. These currents move water and sediment along the coast, causing a process called longshore drift. Imagine walking along the beach and you notice that after a while, you've drifted farther down the shoreline. That's longshore drift at work. Next are the rip currents, which form when water piled up by waves flows back into the sea through narrow, fast-moving channels. These currents are powerful enough to carry sediments and even debris away from the shore. If you ever felt the tug of water pulling you seaward, you may have encountered a rip current.
In addition to that, we can see the currents generated by waves also play a key role in shaping the beach environment. Longshore approach of the shore at an angle moving parallel to the coast. These currents transport sediments along the shoreline, helping to distribute sand. Meanwhile, rip currents are strong, narrow currents that flow from the shore out to the sea. These form when waves push water toward the shore, and rip currents can be dangerous for swimmers, but they also serve an important ecological role by moving sediment offshore.
Next is the role of wind. Wind significantly reshapes beaches, particularly where the sand is dry and light. It can move sand up to the beach to form dunes or transport it sideways along the shore. Ever notice how the wind can whip the sand into your face on a windy day at the beach? That's aeolian transport in action. This process, called aeolian transport, causes sand grains to bounce along the surface or roll. Wind-blown sand helps from dunes, which stores sand for future storm.
So in addition, wind plays a massive role in shaping the beach, particularly above the high tide mark. When we talk about sediment transport, hindi lang water ang may influence. Wind can carry fine sediments, especially during low tide, when large portions of beach are exposed. And based on the picture, we can see that over time, wind action can lead to formation of dunes, which protect inland areas from coastal erosion. In some instances, wind can even push sand further inland, creating vast dune fields. We often can see result of wind action combined with waves in the beach building processes where sediment is moved in cycles, whether over the span of hours, days, or even months.
Next are the barrier island. This dynamic system constantly shift and change, shaped by waves, tides, and wind. They protect the mainland from storm but are also vulnerable to erosion. Think of barrier island like a beach frontline defense, constantly fighting off the sea to protect the land behind them. Next is the sandy barrier island chain, which consists of beaches, dunes, and sometimes washover fans. The beach part of the island behaves like a mainland beach, but the island itself can move over time as sediment is redistributed. If you ever vacation on a barrier island, you'll probably notice how the beach looks a little different each year. That's the dynamic nature of this island at play. Barrier island may either migrate or remain stable depending on factors like sediment supply, sea level rise, and storm activity. Next is the lagoon, estuary, or marsh. Behind the barrier island, these are calm, protected waters that provide rich ecosystem like marshes, mudflats, or mangroves, offering habitats for wildlife. Ever gone kayaking in a quiet, sheltered lagoon behind a barrier island? That's the kind of environment we're talking about. The sediment is often fine, such as mud or sleet, due to the calmer waters. This environment filters nutrients, serve as nursery ground for fish, and act as a buffer during storm. Next are the tidal inlets, the channel that separate barrier island. These allow water to flow between the ocean and lagoon, maintaining circulation and sediment exchange. Inlets also often serve as natural harbors. If you've seen boats passing through these narrow channels, that's linked to the vital inlets.
So dito, we can see different examples of barrier island environments. These environments show how diverse barrier islands can be, and each play a specific role in coastal ecosystems. The first one is a sandy barrier island with dunes. This type of island is typically long and narrow, with a line of dunes acting as deep as the first steepens against the ocean. The dunes are made from wind-blown sand, and they help protect inland areas from storm surges and high tides. It's common to find vegetation on these dunes that helps stabilize the sand and prevents erosion. Next is the mangrove forest, thriving behind the barrier. Behind many barrier islands, you will also find an ecosystem like forest mangrove. These forests are essential for protecting coastlines as the defense root system of mangroves prevent erosion and serve as the habitat for various species. They also act as a buffer, absorbing excess water during storms and helping to prevent flooding. Little Tibet Inlet. Inlets like this one connects the back barrier lagoons or estuary in maintaining the exchange of water, nutrients, and marine life between the lagoon and the ocean. Tidal currents flow throughout these inlets, transporting sediments and shaping the coastal landscapes over time. By discussing these examples, we can understand how barrier islands not only protect the mainland but also foster unique environments that support diverse ecosystems. These areas are dynamic, and water and sediments help shape their structure and the life forms that thrive in them.
Next are the different ways barrier island forms. Shoal and longshore bar aggregation. Shoals or shallow underwater ridges gradually rise above the water surface as waves and current push sediments onto them. Over time, this builds up to create a barrier island. This is like watching a sandbar slowly grow bigger until it becomes a small island. Next is the process of spit segmentation. A spit is a long, narrow stretch of sand extending from the mainland. Sometimes storms or rising sea levels break spits into segments, forming individual barrier island. Think of a sand spit getting longer, and then suddenly a storm comes along, breaking it apart into smaller island. Next is the mainland ridge engulfment. As sea level rise, old coastal ridges can be submerged, isolating them and turning them into a barrier island. If you ever visit a beach where there used to be a ridge or cliff, that's now an island. Next is the welding or veneering process, where older geological features like ancient dunes are covered by newer sediment as sea level rise. This helps create a modern barrier island. Next is the lateral shifting of coastal sand. As sea level rise or fall, sand can move along the shore, forming a new barrier island. This shifting coastline constantly reshapes the landscape. Lastly is the composite mode of origin, where multiple processes overlap. For example, a shoal might emerge first, and then longshore currents may extend it by moving more sediment along the coast. Many barrier islands form through this combination of processes, making each one unique.
This diagram illustrates three proposed methods for barrier island formation. The first one is the dune drowning. This process occurs when rising sea levels submerge existing dunes, eventually turning them into barrier islands. As sea levels rise, the low-lying areas around the dunes become submerged, separating them from the mainland. Over time, these dunes evolve into standalone islands, the coastal barriers. It's an ongoing process, and as sea levels continue to rise due to climate change, more dunes may transform into barrier islands. Next is the spit accretion. This process involves the detachment of spits, which are narrow and land formation that extend into the ocean. Over time, as waves and currents move sediment, spits can become disconnected from the coast, forming barrier islands. It's a gradual process, but the continuous deposition of sediment helps these islands grow and evolve. The movement of waves and currents play a critical role in shaping these spits, which can eventually break off and form new islands. And lastly, we have the shoal emergence. Shoals, which are underwater sandbanks, can rise above the water surface as sediments accumulate. When this happens, they gradually build up to form barrier islands. Shoal emergence is often driven by wave action, which continuously deposits sediments onto the shoal, pushing it upward. This process illustrates how barrier islands are not static. They are constantly changing as sediments are moved by waves and currents. The formation of barrier island is complex and dynamic, often involving a combination of these processes. These islands are vital in protecting coastal areas, and understanding how they form helps us better appreciate their importance in the coastal ecosystem.
Beach deposits refers to the accumulation of sediments like sand, pebbles, and gravel na nabubuo along the foreshore and the backshore zones ng beach. The foreshore is the area between the low, and the high tide. So dito makikita natin ang land-dipping crossbeds, which are the small ridges formed by the movement of the sand along the beach. Along the beach face dahil sa galaw ng alon. The wave pushes the sand, forming these crossbeds. So, on the other hand, the backshore is the area that lies landward of the foreshore and is usually dry. It is primarily affected by storm waves, and aeolian process. So, aeolian is the wind process. During the storms, mas malaki ang alon ang na maaaring tumulak sa mga sediments papasok sa backshore. And also, the wind moves finer materials like sand that forming into dunes. So, in short, beach deposits are shaped by wave action in the foreshore and by the windstorm activities sa backshore. So, for more information, the beach environments are dynamic systems, and they are constantly shaped by the interplay of waves, tides, and the currents. The foreshore zone, where the beach deposits accumulate, can vary significantly in the width depending on the tidal range and the wave energy. So, sa mga areas na high energy ang waves, makikita natin na mabilis ang pagbabago ng shoreline dahil sa erosion ng mga sediment. Dahil sa erosion at sediment transport. So, on the other hand, sa low energy environments naman, like beach, tend to be more stable, with sediments building up over time. Human activities like coastal development like coastal development and beach nourishment, can also alter the natural process, causing changes in the distribution of the beach deposits. So, beach sediments are also important habitat for various organisms. So, example na dito ay mga crabs, mollusks, and small fishes. These animals rely on these sediments for shelter, food, and spawning grounds, further influencing the formation and reworking of the deposits. So now, let's look at this image. This image shows the typical sedimentary structures formed in the beach and near shore zones. Based on the study of Davidson, Arnott, and Greenwood in 1976. So here, we can see that Aeolian dunes formed by the wind action. So ito ay particularly significant because they serve as a natural barriers against the storm surges and high tides. So in many coastal areas, these dunes are the first line of defense against flooding and coastal erosion. Dune grasses and vegetation play an important role in stabilizing these dunes by trapping sand and preventing it from being blown away by the wind. So the beach is where people usually enjoy swimming and sunbathing, located above the foreshore. The foreshore is the zone affected by regular wave action. So below that, the swash is where the water from wave runs up to the beach face. Then there is the berm. The berm which makes the high tide line. Then the seaward. In the seaward, we enter the shore face, divided into the upper, middle, and the lower zones. The upper, middle, and lower parts of the shore face are also dynamic. In these areas, sediment is constantly reworked by waves and currents. Beyond the shore face is the shoaling wave, or the shoaling wave zone, where waves starts to grow as they approach the shore. Shoaling refers to the process where wave heights increase, the water depth decreases near the shore, and this energy plays a major role in the transport and sorting of sediments. Makikita din natin sa diagram natin na iba't ibang wave zones, which also helps us to understand how the energy is distributed as the waves approach to the shore, affecting the size and the type of sediments that settle in each zones. The breaker zones naman is where the waves break. So, and the oscillatory wave is where the motion of the water becomes more circular. Each of these zones has different sedimentary features, and understanding them help us to analyze the coastal processes. So, let us focus naman sa shore-based deposits. So, the shore-based deposits extends from the low tide level to the fair weather wave base, which is the deepest point where normal waves can still affect the seafloor. So, yun nga. So, the shore-based deposits refer to the sedimentary deposits that accumulate in the shallow marine environment, typically between the shoreline and the deeper continental shelf. This region is characterized by constant interaction between the land and the sea, driven by waves and tides, and also the currents. So, this zone is typically divided into upper, the middle, and the lower shore faces, and each with distinct sedimentary phases or phases. So, yun na. Let's move on to the upper shore face, dominated by strong bidirectional waves, land, longshore currents. It is the closest to the shoreline, with 0 to 5 meters deep, experiences the high energy from breaking waves, deposits coarse, well-sorted sands, and gravel with ripples and cross-bedding. Dahil sa malakas na energy ng sediments, dito ay usually coarse or like yung sand, coarse yung sand and gravel, ibig sabihin yun nga, coarse. So we have the middle shore phase. Middle shore phase naman, it is characterized by high energy conditions due to the breaking waves and the rip currents. Ito naman ay lumalalim ng 5 to 15 meters. It is a moderate energy zone with finer sands and bioturbation and ripple marks influenced by both waves and tidal currents. So note lang na ang bioturbation natin means the disturbance of the sediments by the living organisms. So dito mas madami na yung living organisms like fishes and plants. And sediments here are finer compared to the upper shore phase but are still deposited under high energy conditions. So lastly, the lower shore phase forms under relatively low energy conditions and grades into open shelf deposits. 15 to 50 meter deep is a low energy zone primarily impacted by storm waves accumulating fine silts and sands with more horizontal bedding and the extensive bioturbation. In this zone, we encounter lower energy since the waves are gentler. The sediments here are finer, and this zone is gradually transitions into open shelf deposits which are found farther offshores. So, mas madami na dito yung mga living things like fishes and plants. So, over time, the shore phase is shaped by the combination of the depositional and erosional process. And during periods of rising sea levels or the transgression na tinatawag, shore phase deposits migrate landward, while during periods of falling sea levels or the regression, they may prograde seaward. These deposits are important in reconstructing past coastal environments and can serve as reservoir for hydrocarbons in subsurface geology. So, ano pa? So, the shore phase deposit is not only based wave energy, but they are also influenced by the seasonal changes. During calm weather, the sediments in the upper shore phase may remain relatively undisturbed. So, while the storm events can cause massive reworking and the redistribution of materials. Longshore currents, which flow parallel to the shore, play a critical role in transporting sediments along the coast. A process known as a littoral drift or littoral drift, this sediments transport is essential in making beaches and forming features like sandbars, spits, and barrier islands. So, ano naman, sa areas naman with high wave energy, we often observe coarser or mas coarse na grain size sa upper shore phase, including the gravel or the larger sand grains. Meanwhile, as we move on to the lower shore phase, finer sediments like silt and clay begin to dominate, reflecting the decreasing of energy of wave as they travel farther from the shore. So, ibig sabihin, mas buo yung ating sediments na nasa sa landward kaysa sa seaward. In the upper shore phase, we often find trace fossils like Scoletos. So, this Scoletos is a common trace fossils na ichnogenous, that is or was originally an approximately vertical cylindrical burrow with a distinct lining. It was produced globally by a variety of organisms, mostly in the shallow marine environments. So, makikita naman natin sa picture yung itsura nila. And it appears as a linear features in the sedimentary rocks. So, sa next picture is in the middle shore phase, we likely to see the structures like Ophiomorpha, which is the Ophiomorpha is an ichnotaxon, usually interpreted as a burrow of an organism, specifically crustaceans living in the nearshore environment. The burrow lining is more or less smooth on the inside and densely strong mammillated or nodules on the outside due to the packing of nodules for the support of the burrow. And lastly and finally, in the lower shore face, we encounter the thalassinoids. The thalassinoids is an ichnogenus of trace fossils. So the fossil records of life forms, yung trace fossil is a fossil record of life forms movement rather than the other life forms of themselves. It is used to refer to dichotomously or T-branch boxworks, mazes, and shafts, unlined and ornamented. So these fossils help us to understand the energy conditions and the organisms that live in these environments. So ngayon naman is let us move in the inland to the back barrier environments. These are found landward of the barrier beaches within the back barrier lagoon. Sediments in these environments vary significantly due to the range of some environments present, including the marshes, which trap the fine sediments and the organic materials, the tidal flats, which are exposed during the low tide and are made up of mud and sand. And due to the sheltering effect of the barrier, the back barrier environments experience the low wave energy. So this allows finer particles such as silts and clay to settle and accumulate. Unlike the higher energy environments like the shore faces, these environments of shore face, the calm waters allow for the preservation of delicate sedimentary structures. And the rich or the organic rich sediments often accumulate due to the presence of the marshes, tidal flats, and the lagoons. This organic material can contribute to the peat formation in the marshes. While back barrier environments are typically low energy, they can be periodically influenced by high energy events or the high energy events like storms and spring tides. During storms, the overwash can occur where sediments from the barrier are transported into the back barrier environments. So these events can deposit coarser materials such as sand and disrupt the fine-grained, low-energy sedimentation process. So, the back barrier environments such as yung marshes natin and lagoons provide a critical habitat for a variety of plant and animal species. These sediments deposited in these areas often support rich ecosystems. The accumulation of fine sediments and organic material in the back barrier environments help stabilize the coastline by trapping the sediments and buffering storm surges. Back barrier sediments are useful in interpreting the past sea level changes, storm events, and environmental shifts in coastal regions. The alternation of the fine-grained sediments with storm deposits or the formation of peat in the marshes can provide insight into historical coastal dynamics. And lastly, we have a diagram showing the complex influences of the deposition in a back barrier environment. This is based on a study by Owen T. Brenner in 2015. So the barrier island itself acts as a shield, protecting the back barrier from the direct wave action. Behind the barrier, we have the shore face and the back barrier deposits, which are influenced by both marine processes. So marine processes like tides and terrestrial inputs like runoff. So yun nga, dahil sa combination ng marine influences like tides and waves and terrestrial inputs like runoff from land, these environments create a complex depositional patterns. So, importante ang mga ito for coastal protection as they help absorb storm surges, and filter water. Also, we can see that the back barrier environments are incredibly diverse, supporting a wide range of environments from salt marshes to tidal flats. So, these areas are essential for biodiversity, providing habitats for migratory birds, the fishes, and the other wildlife. So, marshes, for example, are crucial for filtering pollutants from the water and the buffering against the coastal flooding. We have the tidal flats, on the other hand, are exposed during the low tide, allowing a variety of invertebrates to thrive, which in turn supports the larger predators, into larger predators like birds and fishes. These environments are also important for human activities in some regions. Tidal flats are used for aquaculture, particularly in harvesting the oysters, mussels, and other shellfishes. However, human impacts such as coastal development and pollution. Humans can disrupt these fragile environments, leading to habitat loss and a decline in ecosystem services. So, also, in the diagram, we see the average barrier slope and the underlying substrate, which affect how sediments are deposited over time. And that would be all for beach deposits, shore-based deposits, and the back barrier sediments. And the other presenter will discuss the other characteristics of modern beaches and barrier island systems.
Washover deposits. Washover deposits form when powerful storm-driven waves, like those from hurricanes or strong storms, breach coastal barriers such as dunes or sand ridges. These waves overtop the barriers, pushing the beach or dune sediments inland into back barrier environments like lagoons, marshes, or tidal flats. This process occurs during extreme events when the energy of the waves is high enough to transport large amount of sand inland. The deposits typically take the shape of fan-like loops spreading out as the water loses energy inland, creating new landforms or altering the existing coastal landscape. These washover events are crucial in the natural evolution of barrier islands and coastal systems. As we can see in the diagram, washover deposits are characterized by layered sedimentation. The initial deposition typically shows horizontal stratification at shadow angles around 1 to 4 degrees as the sand is laid down by the first wave of the water. As the storm progresses, the wave continues to push more sediment inland. The deposit can develop four-set beds with steeper slopes, sometimes as much as 30 degrees. These layers are a result of sediments being carried further inland as the energy of the waves decreases. The sediment layers within the washover deposits are distinct from other coastal deposits, making them a key feature in identifying past storm events in geological records. Washover deposits are significant in shaping coastal landscape, especially barrier islands. They contribute to the redistribution of sediment, which can either build up or erode sections of the island. In some cases, these deposits can fill back barrier lagoons or marshes, raising the elevation of the land. Over time, repeated washover events can lead to migration of barrier islands landward, a process known as barrier island rollover. So, understanding washover deposits is essential for coastal management, as they provide clues about the frequency and intensity of past storms to help predict future changes in coastal morphology due to rising sea levels and increased storm activity. Next, we have the tidal channel deposits. Tidal channel deposits are primarily composed of sand and often feature an erosional base, where the flow of water through tidal channel erodes the seabed, leaving behind coarse lag deposits of sand and gravel. These channels form between the barrier islands or along the edges of tidal flats, where the movement of tidal currents scores the bottom and carries sediment. As the current loses energy, it deposits sand in the channel, creating a record of fast tidal flow. The erosional base marked by the coarser materials helps differentiate these deposits from other sedimentary environments. These tidal channel deposits are critical in shaping coastal systems, acting as pathway for sediment exchange between open water bodies and sheltered environments like lagoons and estuaries. Sedimentary structures in tidal channel deposits often exhibit cross-bedding and ripple marks, which are indicative of bidirectional flow due to the tidal currents. Over time, these deposits can record changes in tidal patterns, sea level, and sediment supply, providing important geological evidence of environmental conditions in coastal estuarine system. Next, we have the tidal delta deposits. Tidal delta deposits occurs on both lagunal and seaward sides of barrier islands. On the lagunal side, a flood tidal delta forms when rising tides transport sediment through tidal inlets and deposit it behind the barriers. On the seaward side, EBB tidal deltas are created when the tide recedes, carrying sediments out from the inlet and depositing it offshore. These deltas represent dynamic sedimentary environments where the tidal currents play a significant role in shaping the coastal system by transporting and depositing materials on either side of the barrier islands. Tidal delta deposits play a significant role in coastal stability and evolution. The sediment exchange between flood and EBB deltas help maintain tidal inlets, preventing them from closing due to sediment buildup. Over time, tidal deltas can expand, shift, or even disappear depending on changes in sea level, storm activity, and sediment supply. Understanding tidal delta deposits is crucial for managing coastal areas, especially where inlets serve as navigation channels or where sediment deposition affects coastal ecosystems. These deposits provides important geological records of past environmental conditions and can be used to predict how coastal systems will respond to future changes in sea level and storm patterns. Next, we have the tidal flat deposits. Tidal flat deposits form along the margins of the mainland coast and the back of barrier islands. These areas experience periodic flooding and exposure due to tidal movements, which deposits fine sediments like silt and clay. The energy in these environments is low, so only fine-grained materials settle, creating a broad, flat expanses of sediment. Tidal flat deposits are important not only for understanding coastal and estuarine environments, but also for their ecological significance. They provide habitat for a range of organisms, including birds, crustaceans, and benthic invertebrates, and serve as critical feeding grounds for migratory species. Additionally, tidal flats play a role in nutrient cycling, as the repeated flooding and exposure promote the exchange of organic matter and nutrients between land and water. In the geological record, tidal flat deposits offer valuable insights into past sea level changes, sedimentation rates, and coastal dynamics. Studying these deposits help scientists reconstruct ancient environments and predict future changes in coastal systems, particularly in context of rising sea levels and changing tidal regimes. Next, we have the lagunal and marsh deposits. So, lagunal and marsh deposits accumulate in low-energy environments within the back barrier lagoons, where fine sediments like muds are deposited. These environments are protected from direct wave action by barrier islands, leading to the accumulation of fine-grained organic-rich sediments. Over time, these deposits may transition into higher-energy deposits such as sandy tidal channels, deltas, and washover lobes, as they grade laterally into areas of fierce water flow and sediment transport. This mix of sediment types reflects the dynamic process of play in back barrier and marsh environments. These lagunal and marsh deposits are critical to the overall stability of the barrier island system. They contribute to the vertical growth of the island by building up sediment in these protected areas, allowing the system to keep pace with rising sea levels. Marshes is particularly play an important role in protecting the island from erosion by acting as buffers against tidal surges and wave action. The combination of organic and inorganic materials in this deposit also creates a fertile environment for plant and animal life, further stabilizing the system and promoting ecological diversity. Together, lagunal and marsh deposits represents the quieter and sediment-rich back barrier zones that are essential for the long-term sustainability of barrier islands. Next, we have to look this diagram. This diagram provides a detailed view of the different sub-environments within the barrier island system. Specifically, one that is transgressing, meaning it is shifting landward due to the rising sea levels, sediment loss. Barrier islands are important coastal features that help protect shorelines from waves and storms, and they are made up of various distinct parts that work together. The beach, the dunes, and washover areas face the open ocean, while the tidal flats, marshes, and tidal channels are located on the bay side, connecting the island to other bodies of water. The beach and dunes are shaped by the action of wind and waves, with dunes formed by wind-blown sand, creating a natural barriers that protect inland environments. The central part of the model emphasizes the role of tidal channels, and tidal deltas are maintaining the island shape. The main tidal channel allows water to flow between the ocean and the bay, and during the high tide, water flows into the island through the channel, bringing sediment and forming a flood tidal delta. This process deposits sediments in sheltered areas, helping to stabilize the island. Conversely, when the tide goes out, sediment is deposited in the ABB tidal delta, which is located near the ocean. These tidal deltas are important for keeping the island in balance, as they help distribute sand and sediment between different parts of the island and the surrounding waters. The washover areas and marshes are also key parts of the system. Washover areas form during storms when the waves push sand from the beach over the island, depositing it in lower-lying areas, which can eventually help the island migrate landwards as sea level rises. The marshes and tidal flats, which are located on the bay side of the island, provide important habitats for wildlife and also serve as buffers against erosions. Tidal deposits beneath the surface, shown in the lower part of the model, it represents the layers of sand and mud that have built up over time, creating a foundation for the barrier island. Together, these sub-environments interact in complex ways, responding to tidal action waves and storms, allowing the island to evolve and adapt over time.
So now, let's move on to the stratigraphy of beach and barrier island environments. So let's have a recap first. The definition of stratigraphy is it is the study of sediment layers or strata deposited over time. Its importance is that it can help in reconstructing the geological history of beach and barrier island environments, and understanding stratigraphy can help us or allow us to see how these formations have evolved over thousands of years. So, napakahalaga talaga ng stratigraphy kasi dito, by examining the different layers of sediments, geologists can determine how beach and barrier island environments have changed over time. So, for example, yung presence ng certain types of sediments natin, it can indicate past periods of higher or lower sea levels, and yung fossilized remains naman ng plants or animals within these layers can also provide clues about the ancient climate and ecosystems that existed in these areas. So now let's proceed sa beach stratigraphy. So in beach environments, we see several common sedimentary structures, which includes the planar bedding, the cross bedding, and the ripple marks. Planar bedding natin, ito yung horizontal layers. Yung cross bedding natin, ito yung angled layers due to wave action. And yung ripple marks naman natin, they are small waves in sand caused by currents. So, to further explain it, yung planar bedding is the horizontal layering of sediments. Yung cross bedding is it forms when angled layers of sand are deposited by waves or currents, and it can be found in both beach and dune environments, and these angled layers of sand indicate the influence of waves and wind. And yung ripple marks naman, they are small wave-like structures in sand caused by water or wind movement. And in terms of sediment characteristics, the sand on beaches is typically well sorted, meaning it has a consistent grain size which reflects the steady energy of the environment. So, sa right side ng presentation, we can see an outcrop wherein yung light blue areas indicates the location of ripple marks, while yung blue lines naman, yun yung pinapakita dito yung cross bedding or yung cross beds. And here, makikita natin yung pictures that illustrates beach stratigraphy, and in this picture, it also represents the sedimentary structures or yung common sedimentary structures na nabanggit kanina. And in the first picture, we can see symmetrical ripples and asymmetrical ripples. So, doon sa symmetrical ripples, which is common sa beach, yung waves ay nakakapag-create ng equal slopes, and sa asymmetrical ripples naman, which is common siya sa dune or sa dune environments, nakakapag-create yung mga processes na nag-o-occur dito ng maalin sa gentler slope or steeper slope. So, hindi equal yung slope sa asymmetrical. Kung sa symmetrical ay equal slope, sa asymmetrical ay hindi. Therefore, symmetrical and asymmetrical ripples can tell us whether kung yung water flow ba or yung wave or yung mga processes na nag-o-occur doon sa area na yon ay consistent or variable. Then, yung second picture naman, ito yung cross-bedding. Ang cross-bedding ay yung may mga angled layers form, nabubuo yung angled layers na yon as sand is pushed by waves. Tapos, yung last picture naman is an outcrop that shows ripple marks and cross-bedding, and yung ripple marks at cross-bedding na yon ay evidence ng past movements ng water sa area na kinakitaan ng outcrop na yon. So, sa picture, we can see meron ding current direction, and yung cross-bedding is yung nasa gilid. May label naman siya. So, yung nasa gilid na parang angled layers, tas meron ding ripple crest, and so, yeah. That ends the beach stratigraphy. So, now, let's move on sa barrier island stratigraphy. So, for barrier islands, stratigraphy is a bit more complex because these environments contain multiple depositional settings. Sa depositional settings, isa na nga dito ang back barrier deposits, tidal inlets, at saka yung for island dunes natin. So, sa back barrier deposits, it consists of fine muds and organic materials from lagoons or marshes. And yung sa tidal inlets naman, they are filled with coarser sediments, often forming channels or troughs. And lastly, sa for island dunes naman, they are made of well-sorted sand deposited by wind and often showing cross-bedding from wind action. Also, sa mga dunes, meron din dito na fossilized soil layers or yung tinatawag natin na buried paleosols, which indicate periods kapag ang vegetation ay instabilized yung dunes before they were buried by new layers of sand. So, ang stratigraphy ng barrier islands can help us understand spatial distribution of sediments at kung paano ito nakakaapekto sa coastal processes na nangyayari dito. And in addition, stratigraphy can also help scientists and engineers to make decisions or mas makakapag-decide ng maayos about coastal development, and by understanding how sediment layers have been deposited over time, we can identify areas that are more or less vulnerable to erosion. O kaya pwede ring vulnerable sa storm surges or sa sea level rise, and this knowledge can inform decisions about kung saan pwede bang mag-build ng structure or infrastructure or how to manage coastal resources effectively. And for example, in areas where barrier island stratigraphy show signs of instability, it might be better to invest in natural restoration rather than building hard structures kagaya nga ng seawalls, which can sometimes make the erosion worse. So, masama yun kung magbibuild ka pa ng seawalls kung unstable na nga yung stratigraphy ng barrier island, diba? So, yun. With the help of stratigraphy, we can determine kung ano bang pwedeng action ang gawin natin sa certain areas. Mas makakapag-decide tayo ng maayos kung paano ba natin mas mape-preserve yung environment na yun. Like yung sa beach and barrier island environment nga natin. So, next naman, yan. This is the features of a barrier island or yung essential features of a barrier island. So, in this diagram, we can see the essential features of a barrier island, wherein sa landward side, we have lagoons, tidal creeks, and marshes, which are critical habitats for various species, and ang mga lugar na ito ay important sa mga para sa biodiversity at ecological health. Then as we move towards the island, nandyan yung back dunes, interdune forest at foredunes, and yung back dunes, it provides protections from wind and storm surges, habang yung interdune forest naman natin ay nagsisilbing buffer or para masuportahan yung wildlife at saka yung plant diversity sa area na yon. Yung beach itself naman, it features components like berm crest, which is the highest part of the beach, the rock line, where the debris accumulates, often providing nutrients for beach ecosystems, and Ang sandbars naman, or yung bars sa picture, ay lumilitaw during low tide and nag-aalok ng temporary habitats at nesting areas para sa mga birds and other species pa.
Now, let's dive into the concept of ancient beach and barrier island sediments. Over all of years, the process that shape barrier islands today have been at work, resulting in the accumulation and preservation of sedimentary layers. These ancient sediments provide a valuable record of past environments, allowing us to reconstruct what these areas look like during the different geological periods. By examining these ancient deposits, geologists can determine the past, positions of shorelines, sea levels, and even the types of plants and animals that inhabited these areas. This information is crucial for understanding how climate and sea levels have changed over time. Next, we'll examine two critical processes: transgression and regression. Transgression is a process where rising sea levels causes the shoreline to move inland, leading to the displacement of terrestrial environments with marine environments. When transgression occurs, sediments deposited by the advancing sea may bury previous land surface. For example, as the sea level rises, you may find that a previously existing beach is submerged, and new sedimentary layers start forming on top of it. Over time, this results in a sequence of sediment layers that reflect a transition from land to sea. In contrast, regression occurs when the sea level falls and the shoreline shifts seaward. As a result, terrestrial or shallow marine environments extend over areas that were once deeper marine zones. This process leads to the exposure and deposition of new sedimentary layers that build outward toward the sea. These processes are directly influenced by factors such as global climate changes, glaciation, and tectonic activities. Understanding that too, the transgression and regression helps us interpret the ancient sedimentary layers that we observe in geological formations. So, transgression by surface retreat. As you can see in the image A, as sea level rises, waves erode the shoreline and move sediments inland. The barrier sands are washed over into the lagoons area, creating a landward migration of the barrier system. The advancing shoreline is also seen depositing new sand on the shore face, leaving behind lagoonal faces and submerged older shorelines. This represents a typical case of gradual shoreline retreat as a result of increasing sea levels. So in the next image, labeled B, transgression by in-place drowning. So this occurs when a rapid rise in sea level floods the barrier islands, drowning the existing barrier system. As the original barrier is submerged, a new barrier can form further inland. In this scenario, previous shorelines are abandoned, leaving a sequence of drowned shore face deposits that mark past positions of the coastline as sea levels progressively rise. So, dito naman tayo sa regression. Image C. Regression happens when the shoreline moves seaward due to a fall in sea level. This results in the formation of new beach and shore face environments. The image shows a regression where a lagoon is left behind as the shore face advances seaward, causing the exposure of offshore and lagoon sediments. So the beach and shore face move outward, expanding the land area. In this process, the beach environment becomes larger as sea level drop. Let's look closer at the mechanisms driving transgressive beach and barrier deposits. There are two primary mechanisms: surface erosion and in-place drowning. So first is the surface erosion. As sea levels gradually rise, wave action erodes the surface, which is the gently sloping underwater area in front of the barrier islands. This erosion causes sediment to be transported offshore or deposited into nearby lagoons. Over time, this erosion causes the entire barrier island to shift landward. You can see in this diagram where the retreat of the shoreline is indicated by the movement sand and sediment. So the second one is the in-place drowning. This mechanism occurs when there is a rapid and significant rise in sea level, which inundates existing barrier islands. When this happens, the land becomes submerged. The new barriers began to form further inland. This process can often happen quite quickly compared to surface erosion, and it plays a significant role in reshaping coastal landscapes. These two mechanisms work together to ensure that barrier islands are in constant motion, responding to the changing sea levels and wave dynamics. Now, let's connect everything we've discussed to the real-world examples. Here are some ancient examples that showcase barrier island sedimentation. So we have 3 examples, and the first one is the Gallup Sandstone in northern New Mexico. It's a perfect example of a regressive barrier deposit. This formation indicates that sea levels were falling at the time, allowing the coastline to advance seaward. And the second example is the Cliff House Sandstone. Represents a transgressive barrier complex showing how rising sea levels cause barrier islands to migrate landward. Another impressive example is the Mississippian Newman Formation. It is located in Kentucky, which preserves sediments from an ancient barrier island system, reflecting changes in sea level and coastal process over millions of years. These ancient formations are more than just rocks. They are windows into the past, showing us how barrier islands formed, evolved, and responded to environmental changes.
So, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for watching and I hope you like it. Also, kapag may katanungan kayo, you can just type it in the comment section so that masasagot namin yung mga katanungan nyo and mas magiging malinaw yung topics na hindi malinaw sa presentation na to.